It's time for What the Farage with Britain's favourite Nigel. Now, as I outlined in my digest at the top of the show, Tory Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson came under fire from the Liberal media elite this week after he told illegal migrants who refused their accommodation on the Bibi migrant barge to F off back to France. The backlash against Westminster's toughest talking MP is all part of the establishment media's attempt to distract from the real issue at hand with this sort of stuff from LBC's Sheila Fogarty.
It should be a line that Rishi Sunak knows not to cross. And of course, he doesn't cross it himself, but he turns a blind eye when his close colleagues do, which to me is tantamount to doing the same. So should Rishi Sunak sack Lee Anderson for the thing he said about migrants going back to France?
And in a heartless and shamelessly partisan tweet that has since been deleted, Labour's Diane Abbott today used the death of 40 migrants off the coast of Italy to quip, "These migrants have indeed effed off to the bottom of the sea." So, Nigel, the left-wing establishment, hardly the beacons of morality they claim to be, are they? What did you make of that tweet from Diane Abbott?
Typical. Absolutely expected. And, I think we're going to be hearing much less from Diane Abbott in the years to come. There's no way Starmer is going to have her standing as a Labour Party candidate next time round. But it's extraordinary. I had tonight on the show a former editor of Labour List. I mean, they are working on the basis that everybody crossing the English Channel are poor, desperate people fleeing war and oppression. And of course, they're not. They're mostly aggressive young males coming for economic reasons, and sadly, far too many coming to join criminal networks in our country. There's a complete blind eye to all of this, and I don't think there's an issue on which the London media is more out of touch with the country than the English Channel illegal migrants. They're illegal immigrants, that's what they are, but we're not supposed to say that. Now, Lee Anderson, well, I mean, Lee's Lee. It's never wise to use the F word in public, all right? But the sentiment of send them back to France, I tell you what, if we polled that particular phrase with the F word out of it, we'd find a very big majority of the country in agreement. So, the bleeding hearts like Sheila Fogarty and all the rest of it are completely out of touch with where the country really is. And Lee is Lee. He's not going to change, for goodness sake. He's who he is. Problem is, whatever Lee says, it isn't just the left-wing media attacking him. We've now got Robert Jenrick, the minister in charge, attacking him, or Robert Generic, as most people now tend to know him. Well, I mean, I'm not even sure he exists. He may well be a hologram. But, Jenrick saying, how dare Lee Anderson say our policy is failing? Well, the policy is failing. It's failing completely and utterly. And they've nothing to offer, frankly. And a whole week of announcements, the Ascension Island and some supposed deal with Turkey. And none of it's worth a row of beans, frankly. And Labour, they've also got a 5-point plan. And none of that's going to work either. And I just think that this is one of those issues where the great British public are growing increasingly disenchanted with the whole political process and, frankly, both of our main parties.
No, indeed. Of course they are. And I think, Nigel, what is particularly telling here, though, is that the establishment media, the Westminster bubble, what they want to do with this story is effectively distract. So this week it was all about the conditions on the Bibi Stockholm, which, by the way, I think are perfectly adequate. But that isn't the point, is it? Because the Bibi Stockholm is a drop in the ocean when you're going to have arrivals of 50,000 by the end of the year. They don't want to talk about the real story.
What was amazing was the focus on 15 young men going onto the Bibi Stockholm. Yeah. Whoa, huge national story. And you know what? We've got some calm weather coming. I mean, the weather's been awful the last few weeks.
Oh, yes.
For kids off school and weather like this, it's not fair. But, we've got some good weather coming. And that barge takes 500 people. That is one average day in the English Channel when the weather is good. There are 50,000 people already in hotels. And I think you're going to see over the next few months the numbers coming to this country literally exploding upwards. And nobody has got the guts or the courage to deal with it. The public are very angry. And what they see is unfairness. Huge waiting lists now for social housing in Britain. Very hard to go and see GPs. Dentists, NHS dentists, forget it. But you're a young man crossing the English Channel, and all of that is available to you. This is about a sense of fairness, and that's why the British public are so angry.
Indeed, and that anger is only increasing. But look, Nigel, can you stand by, please? Because I want Nigel to come back after the break to tackle these calls from far-left Labour MPs to prove his banking crusade is apolitical by taking on the case of a Windrush OAP who's been debanked by NatWest. So Nigel is going to have his reaction to new polling showing a Labour landslide could be coming. Also on the way tonight, after Prince Harry dropped a subtle hint that he could swap Montecito for Tokyo, could the Duke and Duchess of Sussex be preparing for life apart? The late Princess Diana's former butler and her rock, Paul Burrell, gives his expert opinion in the next hour. Back soon. Welcome back. Paul Burrell with the latest on Prince Harry in Japan coming up. But first, Nigel Farage back with me live. And Nigel, thousands of people from across the political spectrum have contacted you with their own debanking nightmares. But one Windrush OAP has been highlighted online after being cancelled by NatWest. So this is Philip Cato. He's 93 years old. He went back to Jamaica a couple of years ago and was getting his UK state pension paid until the bank closed his account this year at short notice. Now, Bel Ribeiro Addy, the Labour MP, has effectively challenged you, Nigel, to take his story on and prove that this isn't just about right-wing folk getting their accounts cancelled. So do you agree that it seems like a terrible decision from NatWest?
Well, of course. And, Philip Cato has my full support, and I'll help him if I possibly can. And it's so silly of Labour MPs to behave like this. Most of them, actually, to be fair, are being very grown up about it. This is a non-partisan issue about our banks being completely out of control in every way. It is not left. It is not right. It's there for everybody. Accountclosed.org that I've set up is there for everybody. And there is a national scandal here, a real national scandal. And I must say, I was pleased today that the FCA finally, the regulator, has woken up to this national scandal, has put 25 of our biggest banks and building societies on notice. Tell us by the 25th of August how many folk you've cancelled and why. And the results are going to be very, very revealing and very interesting, unless, of course, they all choose to lie, which is possible, because I've seen a bit of that with Coots myself. But the FCA, what use are they? And we learned today that FCA employees have been going together on pride marches in Leeds, on transgender marches. They say that LGBTQI plus, etc., rights are a very important part of financial services. They're not. They really are not. The point about financial services is that the individual needs to be protected from being ripped off by giant corporations. And whether that's through pensions, through banking, through insurance, or whatever else it may be, we do not need to politicise financial services. And I suspect the FCA actually are as much a part of the problem. Philip Cato, I will do whatever I can to help you.
Goodness me, so the FCA is as woke as NatWest, which hardly fills you with much faith. Now, speaking of woke, Nigel, Channel 4 News cock a hoop last night after they were leaked a poll showing Labour winning not just a landslide at the next election, a tidal wave. Watch this.
Conservatives at the moment are facing a bit of a catastrophe, and it was conducted between the 31st of July and the 4th of August last Friday. So it takes into consideration all the noise and publicity about ULEZ and North Sea drilling. That means the Conservatives will be down to fewer than 100 seats, just 90. Labour would have a landslide, a majority, 461 seats.
So, Nigel, I mean, that is a result far, far worse than Tony Blair's landslide in 1997 for the Conservative Party. Given what's going on politically at the moment, Nigel, this momentum that you have on your side after the big debanking victory, the fact that the migrant crisis has been an issue that you first put on the political map over 3 years ago now, and this polling predicting a Tory landslide, does any of that tempt you with a return to frontline politics?
Well, in some ways, you've just made the argument not to. Because there's an argument, Dan, I've been more effective not being in frontline politics.
Indeed.
There's an argument
right here.
that I've picked up issues that actually cross many of the traditional left-right lines in politics. And I've been able to propel them into being big areas of national debate where maybe we're actually going to get some decent reform and perhaps a bit more fairness back into people's lives. So the thing about frontline politics is it's necessarily incredibly partisan, incredibly tribal. So I kind of think that, and by the way, I was only ever in politics to affect change. I was never in it for rank, title, or position. I couldn't give a tuppenny damn about any of those things. I'm not interested. I want to affect change. So arguably, I might be doing better with 3.4 million followers on social media and a perch at GB News, as long as they'll have me. Maybe I can affect more change where I am. So no is the answer.
Interesting, and obviously you're not going anywhere. At the same time, Nigel, though, if anything close to this poll was to eventuate, we'd have a socialist country. We would have the borders thrown open by Labour. I mean, look at the candidate, Nigel, who they have selected to fight the mid-Bedfordshire election. You know, Labour and Starmer like to pretend that they're moderate on the environment. They've gone for an eco-extremist who's protesting in favour of Just Stop Oil, dressed as a Greenpeace zombie. I mean, do you not worry about giving the country up to that lot?
What I worry about is a Conservative Party that pretend they're Conservative, allowed 1.2 million people legally to come into the country last year, and put our taxes up to the highest level since Clement Attlee was in power, and we were paying down post-war debt. A Conservative Party that now want to ban oil heaters for the millions that live in rural England and are hopelessly out of touch, and not even vaguely Conservative, lie at every single election to the electorate. And Dan, the truth is, there's very little difference between these two parties. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. So let's see. If there is a Labour landslide, and I think, maybe Channel 4 News got overexcited, but I can't see people going out to vote Conservative. Why would they? They've made 13 years of running down the military, of failing at everything, of breaking promises. Why would they? Then maybe, if I got a role back in politics, it might come post the Conservative apocalypse, where the centre-right might need somebody who could offer some principled leadership. But I don't think there's much that can be done now to stop the car crash coming next autumn.